I'm Tanya Kane-Perry.
And I'm Michael LeBeau.
With NewsWrap, a summary of some of the news in or affecting LGBTQ communities around the world for the week ending March 7th, 2020. The largest ever field of LGBTQ candidates running in U.S. state primary elections on March 3rd generally did very well. 38 openly queer candidates were backed by the nonpartisan Victory Fund, and at least 28 of them will move on to represent their political parties in the November general elections. 3 races remain too close to call. Among the notable victories, Todd Gloria won his primary and is expected to become the first openly gay mayor of San Diego, California. Durham, North Carolina City Council member Vernetta Alston won the District 29 primary for the State General Assembly. Out Filipina-American Iraq War veteran Gina Ortiz won the Democratic primary in a congressional district between El Paso and San Antonio. In November, Ortiz could become the first queer lawmaker in Texas. She's just part of what The Advocate calls the Lone Star State's Democratic primary rainbow wave. 4 LGBTQ candidates beating incumbent state representatives and 5 queer incumbents fending off primary challenges. Oh, and what about notoriously homophobic Alabama judge and repeat Republican Senate wannabe Roy Moore? He lost badly in a field topped by another notorious Alabama homophobe, former Trump Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Lesbian former mayor of Houston, Texas, Anise Parker, now leads the Victory Fund. She said, "We are rewriting the rules on electability and embracing the fact that America is ready to elect LGBTQ candidates up and down the ballot." Emory University political science professor Alan Abramowitz gave credit to former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Abramowitz told the Reuters news agency that Buttigieg's presidential campaign inspired more LGBTQ people to run for office, and added that there's a greater acceptance of the LGBT community among the public and a willingness to vote for LGBTQ candidates in many parts of the country. It may also be significant that 1 in 10 voters identified as LGBTQ, according to an NBC News exit poll conducted in 12 of the 14 states that voted in the so-called Super Tuesday primaries. A third of those queer voters were under the age of 30, and 65% were under 45. Virtually half of them identified as very liberal, while 30% said they are somewhat liberal. Only 4% called themselves conservative. According to the same poll, about 42% of queer Democrats said they cast their presidential primary votes for Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Some 22% backed the other progressive candidate, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Warren ended her campaign on March 5th after disappointing Super Tuesday results. That leaves former Vice President Joe Biden vying for the Democratic nomination against Sanders. Biden attracted less than 20% of the queer vote in the primary, but the prospect of another 4 years of Donald Trump is expected to drive most LGBTQ voters to whichever Democrat opposes him in November.
An Aboriginal smoking ceremony and Welcome to Country by Graham Sims kicked off this year's Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras Parade on February 29th. A crowd of about 200,000 people cheered parade leaders Dykes on Bikes and close to 200 floats during the annual evening festivities. Looming coronavirus fears may have contributed to a slightly smaller than usual turnout. Not surprisingly, the loudest cheers were for members of the New South Wales Rural Fire Service, who heroically battled this year's horrendous bushfires. The usual number of local, state, and federal politicians were there to glad hand potential voters. Dua Lipa and Sam Smith joined the march ahead of their headline performances at the massive dance party later that night. As qnews.com.au noted, in the true spirit of Mardi Gras, the parade was not without political flair. The crowd seemed to enjoy a group in navy blue jumpsuits emblazoned with the words, Department of Homo Affairs. However, 3 of them were arrested when they tried to block the Liberal Party float. The Liberal Prime Minister was mocked by several people prancing around in giant Scott Morrison masks, another entertaining but apparently unsanctioned parade contingent. There were far more thumbs down than up for the ballyhooed free worldwide live coverage of the event. SBS was criticized for spending more screen time on celebrity and host chit-chat and commercials than the actual parade itself.
More than 130 filmmakers from around the world are boycotting an Israeli government-sponsored LGBT film festival in Tel Aviv. At least 100 queer filmmakers are among the group refusing to submit films or otherwise participate in events that, in the words of their pledge, are partially or fully sponsored by complicit Israeli institutions until Israel complies with international law and respects Palestinian rights. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the petition was organized by the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. The group says they want to counter Israel's effort to project a progressive image while denying the rights of all Palestinians, queer and non-queer alike. Some critics perpetuate the idea that many of the people behind the boycott actually seek Israel's destruction. Queer Palestinians are squeezed in the middle between Netanyahu's policies and those of the Palestinian Authority. Homosexual acts are illegal in the Gaza Strip, but not in the West Bank. However, Israeli authorities generally greet Palestinian LGBTQ people fleeing oppression with house arrest or deportation. The 15th Annual Tel Aviv International LGBT Film Festival is scheduled for June 4th through the 13th.
Miss Staten Island, Madison Lancelota, was banned from her New York City borough's annual St. Patrick's Day parade just hours after she came out as bisexual. Parade President Larry Cummings also banned a parade entry by the Pride Center of Staten Island for the 10th consecutive year. He calls it a non-sexual identification parade. Cummings claimed that banning Miss Staten Island was for her own safety. He then banned 17-year-old Miss Richmond County outstanding teen Victoria Montori for vocally supporting Lancelota. Miss Richmond County Gabriel Ryan and Staten Island outstanding teen Angelica Mrocek announced that they would boycott the parade in response. Cummings also gave the boot to 2 Staten Island high school marching bands because they wore rainbow heart stickers. Staten Island has held a St. Patrick's Day parade for more than 50 years, typically attracting about 50,000 spectators. Just like the event in Manhattan, the Staten Island Parade is organized by the Irish Catholic Ancient Order of Hibernians. However, the much bigger march in Midtown finally allowed LGBTQ entries for the first time in 2015. Miss Staten Island Lancelota doesn't regret coming out for 1 millisecond. She told the New York Post, "I said what I have to say. I still think that my message got across, and that's most important."
Finally, a Dallas-Fort Worth area Texas schoolteacher suspended for promoting a homosexual agenda has won a $100,000 settlement. Art teacher Stacy Bailey was placed on administrative leave at Charlotte Anderson Elementary School in August 2017. A parent had complained about Bailey discussing her future wife as part of a Get to Know Your Teacher presentation. Included were slides showing her fiancé, Julie Vasquez, along with photos of friends, relatives, and her dog. Twice named Mansfield Independent School District Teacher of the Year, after the suspension, Bailey was reassigned to Lake Ridge High School in 2018. She sued the district in May 2018 in federal court for discrimination based on sexual orientation. A judge ruled in October 2019 that the district had indeed violated Bailey's constitutional rights. In the out-of-court settlement, the district denied any wrongdoing and said Bailey was disciplined for the age-inappropriate presentation. A spokesperson said that it wanted to resolve the matter to avoid the time, expense, and stress and other impacts of continuing litigation.
The settlement requires the district to conduct mandatory LGBTQ sensitivity training for human resources personnel and counselors, and to also offer it to interested staffers and parents, to have the school board vote for an anti-discrimination policy, to expunge the suspension from Bailey's record, and to provide her with a neutral letter of recommendation. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments last October in 3 related queer right-to-work cases. The legal arguments for the LGBTQ people at the center of those cases, however, center on existing federal civil rights laws rather than the Constitution to assert that they are protected from discrimination. The Mansfield Independent School District vote on an anti-bias provision will reportedly come after the High Court issues its ruling in those cases, most likely in June of this year. Bailey and Vasquez, who married in March 2018, say that they'll donate $10,000 of the settlement to an as-yet unnamed LGBTQ nonprofit group. Their attorney, Jason C.N. Smith, told CNN that he'd donate $10,000 of his reduced legal fees to the Human Rights Campaign. Bailey said at a press conference that, "If you are a school district who thinks you can bully and shame a gay teacher out of their job, I hope you remember my name, and I hope you think twice."
That's NewsWrap, global queer news with attitude for the week ending March 7th, 2020. Follow the news in your area and around the world. An informed community is a strong community.
NewsWrap is written by Greg Gordon, edited by Lucia Chappelle, produced by Brian DeShazer, recorded at the studios of KPFK Los Angeles, and brought to you by you.
Keep us in ears around the world at thiswayout.org, where you can also read the text of this newscast and much more.
And you can listen to NewsWrap each week by subscribing to our This Way Out Radio YouTube channel. For This Way Out, I'm Tanya Kane Perry.
And I'm Michael LeBeau.